Okay, so what I did last week, I gave you the first part of the notes, right? And I had to make a caveat up front saying, I'm going to ask for your forgiveness because I got about a zillion notes on this one, but I opted for you to have the information rather than just little squiggly lines, for notes, okay? So Revelation 11 is one of the great chapters that really lay out the differences between the end time views. So I have new notes, okay, and that includes last week, but I had to modify them a little bit, okay? So thanks, Deb. Yep. Okay, there you go. Thanks, Wes. Yeah, that's fine. If you didn't get one last week, you'll have what you need here. Yeah. She's coming around there, yeah. What's that? Last week notes are going to be included in that, but these are modified. Yeah. There's been some new manuscripts discovered. New manuscripts have been discovered. Yeah, new canon. But since we're our own final authority here, we can do whatever we want. So, right before class, I sucked down a chunk of a protein bar, and it got right in my throat. And it's okay now. I'm okay. I am good. So, thank you, bro. Now, so what we'll do is I'll refrain from the old. Actually, I'm getting a new whiteboard here soon. That's going to be bigger, and I'll have more. Yeah. I feel a little lost today. I do. So y'all pray for me. Part of my heart is lonely, but I think I'll make it. So now it's cool because we can take our time through this chapter. We made a little bit of headway last week. These will include last week's notes, so if you missed them, you got them. Penny? Mm-hmm. Now, again, I seek forgiveness. I had to load this down because I just felt like, again, I know I just said this, but it's better to have the information in front of you, right? So later on when you're studying, you might be able to look at these notes in some fashion, and perhaps they will help. Okay? But at least it'll give you an idea of the different perspectives that are out there. Okay? My view of Revelation is what I like to call more of a balanced combination view. Of course, I'm not the only one that thinks that, obviously, but I think that through the years, and it's like life, you know what I mean? As you grow older, you tend to mellow a little bit, right? And you tend to not be as hasty, and you tend to not be as quick to judge, because when you learn things in life, you realize, man, I was a little bit overbearing then, and I should have listened a little more here. Is anybody here like that, or are we just all still full of pride and stuff like that? You notice I didn't let anybody off the hook, right? It's like, are we all still full of pride, or is anybody like that? Yeah. So God gives us personalities, but over time, He likes to mellow us into His love and His grace, And I find this very important in the book of Revelation because there's so many points of view, and everybody gets pretty passionate about it, right? And I remember when I was a young fellow back in 1872, when we were in Bible school, you get all fired up and you got the truth and you're going to change the world, And as time goes on, you hear other perspectives. And if you want to grow and learn, I learned that probably 70% of people just take what they hear at church, and that's good enough for them. It's just the way it is. But I was never wired like that. I was radically saved, and I wanted truth because I had been lied to for so long. I found out it was no different in the churches. And I say that with a tongue in cheek. There's a lot of sincere people, but sometimes we can be sincerely wrong. And the key is we might not know that, so the only option we have is to present what we think we currently know with humility, right? I learned that the hard way. And, anyway, I could go on and on. Maybe sometimes we need therapy sessions like that. What do you guys think? Maybe it's therapy Sunday today? I don't know. But I say all that because Revelation 11 really is a chapter that really accentuates the different interpretations of the book, probably more than any other except chapter 20, when you get to the so-called millennial reign, right? So we talked a lot about the pattern of the book. Let's see if we review. You all set, Brian? Okay. My secret notes are in my office. If you, in the book, generally speaking, it's two cities at war. Who are they? Babylon and New Jerusalem. Even if you just get that, that's going to solve a lot of the problems. Because people try to make Babylon, Iraq, or Rome, or the some world system. All this crazy. It's always been what it is. It's the world system. Okay. New Jerusalem is the people of God, right? You have a pattern that goes from earth to heaven, back to, and finally, heaven wins. And that's important because Revelation is not a chronological book, it's a cyclical book. The second coming occurs at least 4 or 5 times as you go through the chapters. And the great mistake our Western culture has made with the book is like everything else, we want to start at A and we want to get to Z, and everything has to make sense as we go through. That is not how really the Bible's written. It's not that way. Especially when you get to Revelation. It's an Eastern book, and Easterners are cyclical in thought. Okay? And by the way, lest you have any wonders about that, remember God started everything over there in Eden, and his people were over in the Middle East, and so it's, when you pick up a Hebrew Bible, you go from right to left, not left to right. I mean, it's crazy, right? So anyway, when we talk about all this, in chapter 8 is where these 7 seals began, and we're all the way in chapter 11, and finally the 7th seal is open, and when he opens the 7th seal, and the 7th trumpet blows, you have the issue, I said trumpets, I meant seals, or trumpets rather, excuse me. The seals were in chapter 6. So when you have the 7th trumpet blown in Revelation 7, around 15 is when Jesus comes again. The kingdoms of this world are now become the kingdoms, there's that protein piece, the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. Okay, so let's go there. And I want to pick up this issue of the temple and those kind of things today. All right. Chapter 11, verse 15. And the 7th angel sounded. There were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. He shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders, which sat before God on their seats, fell on their faces in worship, saying, we give thee thanks, O Lord God, which art, it was, are to come, because you have taken to thee thy great power and hast reigned. The nations were angry, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and you should give reward to thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great. And the temple of God, in verse 19, was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and so forth. See? So you see how the chapter ends. There's no question about the time element we're talking about here. It's when he comes again. You can compare this to chapter 19, for example. You can compare this to chapter 6, for example. Other places in the book where, again, it cycles around and he comes again. The point with that kind of stuff is that how else could the Bible have been written when you think about it? God can't give every single detail from the beginning of time forever. So therefore, he continually shows the movie, right? So you can see past, present, and future all at once. It's pretty unique because isn't that how he is? He can see it all. There's no time with the Lord. So he gave us a word that kind of lends itself to that kind of thinking, interpretation as well. Okay? And that's encouraging because we don't have to worry about if the current headline is matching a Bible verse, we think, or we don't have to worry about so much what happened in the past in the context. Is that all there was? We can know that whatever generation we're in, this book is going to apply because of the way it's written. Does that make sense to you at all? Okay. So now last week we got in and I believe we covered the temple pretty thoroughly. If you look at chapter 11, verse 1, let's have somebody start reading that again. Let's go to verse 1 okay, go to 1 through 4. That'll do for now. Someone could read that. Okay, thank you. So last week, if you look on page 1 of your notes, okay, this is a prophecy, and I believe this directly connects with the end of chapter 10. John is told, you must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues, okay? When he begins, he's given a reed, and he measures this temple. So the key here is what temple is in view, okay? Then we have this issue of 42 months, or 3.5 years, also referred to as 1,260 days, or a time times and a half a time. It's a very unique number that's very much concerned with God's people, especially under persecution. 3.5 is half of what number? 7, okay? I think that's significant, because 7 is the number of completion in the Bible, and this is half of that, okay? So in the end, any persecution is going to fall short concerning the people of God. We ultimately win. And then we have these two witnesses. I don't believe one's name is Jehovah and the other's name Mormon. I don't think those are the guys, right? But these two witnesses are called the two olive trees and the two lampstands that stand before the God of the earth. Well, that clears everything up, right? We know what they are now. So we're good to go, right? Now, the good news is that any of this stuff is in no way salvation issues. Amen? So we need to treat each other properly, which means love one another, and enjoy the study. Amen? So, last week we covered this. The futurist believes what? What does the futurist believe about the temple and the 3.5 years? You can cheat by looking at your notes if you want. What's that? Yeah, the futurist believes it's a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, okay? The 3.5 is a literal 3.5 years in what they would call the second half of what they refer to as a great tribulation, okay? The two witnesses, therefore, they believe are Moses and Elijah, literally come back. We're going to look at this a little more today. The past tense view is it's still literal temple, but they believe Revelation was written before AD 70, and that was all about the siege of Jerusalem under Titus, and the temple was destroyed and so forth. The historical view is very fascinating to me. They take a figurative viewpoint. 3.5 years was the same time Jesus, what? Ministered on earth. So the church's ministry is also likened unto a 3.5 year time period, if you will. And this lends itself to the last days concept. This is where I really need my whiteboard. The last days concept, if you will, right? And so time is short. We've been in the last days since Pentecost. We've covered all this at length, okay? And so it's just really 3.5 years in the context of prophetic, figurative language. We talked about the day for a year concept, 1,260 years. Reformers held this view. They believed the church was kind of persecuted pagan Rome, then what they call the Holy Roman Empire. And then finally, their shackles were broken with the start of the Reformation, okay, and so forth. The combo view really is my view on page 2. I understand the history of the church and its persecution, and I can go with that, although I would still allow for a literal 3.5-year final push of evil at the end where the dragon is unleashed, saints are persecuted, and then the dragon is finally destroyed in flaming fire, and the saints are victorious. This would not be a dispensational view either, because of why? Why do you think? I know I have some notes there, but what's the dispensationalists teach on this matter? Yeah, they would teach that there's two separate peoples of God with two distinct plans for the ages. Honestly, I used to be a dispensational. I don't see that. I see the two have been made one in the new covenant. Okay? And now there's a new Israel, one people of God. Okay? And that's not a dispensational matter at all. That's a fundamental change in the government of God. Look at the book of Hebrews. Okay? We're not going backwards. We're not going back to an Aaronic priesthood and all that stuff. So Hebrews tells us a lot about what maybe some passages can't mean. Okay? So I hold to the unity of God's people, and we will be persecuted but be victorious in the end. Okay? So you understand the word rapture. All that means, it's from Latin. It just means to be caught up. We all believe we're going to get caught up to meet him in the air, right? No one's denying that. The issue is the church going out 7 years before. And as I've mentioned before, that's a relatively new teaching in church history. When does anybody know when that teaching kind of came in? 70s. Nope. I'm guessing. Nope. Around that time, that's correct. 1830 to 1860s, through the congregational movements, C.I. Scofield, Darby, all those guys. They bring some necessary elements to the plate, though, because the Gentile kind of messed up. Like, you know, there's a ton of anti-Semitism, right, in Roman Catholicism and in the Reformers. You realize that, right? So it blinded their minds to God's old covenant people in a big way. And I think the closer we get, I think, things come off. Like when you look at Romans 11 and their eyes are blinded in part, so to say. That just doesn't apply to the Jew. As we get closer, there's going to be more revelation given, so to say. And when you get to places like Luke 21, when he says, the Jews will be scattered among all nations until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled, implying there's going to be a time where they won't be scattered anymore, right? So I think a lot of the dispensationalists saw the issues of some prophecies and the irrevocable promises God made to Abraham and all these things. What was the trouble with them, though? What happened to the pendulum? It swung way this way. And now there's two separate plans and two separate ways of getting saved. And when I was in dispensational circles, I've seen anywhere from 4, no kidding, to 15 dispensational time periods. And they all had different plans of the ages. I mean, that gets out of control. You know, I don't think the Bible is that complicated in that regard. I think it's pretty clear. God had a plan. He pulled a nation out. Through him came Messiah. And through him now, it has been finished, and it is just waiting to be consummated. If I could just sum it up that simple, okay? I think this will help us who the two witnesses are, by the way, okay? Now, as we read on, last week we went through all these verses on the temple. Remember that? There is no doubt in Revelation the temple is the one in heaven. It's just so clear you couldn't miss it with probably 12 missing machines, right? Even if you had one missing machine, that still wouldn't help you. But if you have 12, anyway. So if you look at your page 2 notes at the bottom, the temple's always the one in heaven. Here's what you would have to conclude. This would be the only time that John used the temple as a reference to an Old Testament rebuilt one on earth. That would be the only time in Revelation he used it that way. Possible, maybe, but the key is it likely, based on how it's used all throughout. I come on an unequivocal no, it's not likely at all. I think we have to leave. So if you look at the verses here, the temple in verse 1, the altar and them that worship are all of one. So is the court. Okay? These are used interchangeably. When you get into verse 2, the holy city in the book of Revelation is New Jerusalem. We looked at this last week. Okay? Right? Now, we had a question about how does this play in? What do you mean, the court without? So I make a distinction. This is in your notes. The temple of God, the one in heaven, made up of what? That's us. Now, we've looked at these verses extensively. I can't go over them all again here this morning, right? But Hebrews is a wonderful text. You have come to the church of the firstborn, the spirits of just men made perfect in heavenly Mount Zion. Old and new are one. This is the 24 elders, 12 and 12. 24, old, new. 144, 12 times 12. Perfect picture. That's the measurement of the city. That's heaven. The court without is us on earth, being allowed to be persecuted by the dragon and his kingdom. That's what that court's about. 42 months, 3.5 years. That's where it gets interesting, right? So whether you take a literal or figurative view of the 3.5 years, there's one thing that's clear, and we're going to look at these in Daniel today too, that figure is applied to God's people under persecution, but being shielded and protected from him who can only kill the body. Jesus said, fear him who can kill both body and soul in the fires of hell, okay? So our body could be burned, like Paul said, but hey, so what? I mean, I'm not saying it's not a bad, I'm just saying, but he can't touch my soul. The wicked one touches me not, according to 1 John 4 and 5, okay? Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. That's why whenever you see the persecution of the saints and how it's pictured here, these witnesses, it looks like they're killed 3.5 days, but they raise up at the end. And that will always be the case. The difference in Revelation is that once for all, Babylon is finally destroyed, never to rise again. Okay? That's the good news he's showing us. We win. Remember, the theme of the book is the Lamb hath prevailed. Okay? So I think it's clear, therefore, on page 3 here, who the worshipers are. All through Revelation, we've seen in chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 7. We'll see in chapter 14, chapter 15. The worshipers are clear. Who its worshipers are us. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. The 24 elders are revealed through a song. They sing the song of Moses and of the Lamb, old, new. Again, might clear you in on who the two witnesses might be. Okay? And so the Son ushered in a new temple, a new priesthood, a new Jerusalem. He's the Lord over a new creation of people, the true Israel of God for all time. And so he says, that court, my people on earth, there's coming a time where I'm giving it over. Watch this. Come to chapter 13 of Revelation. Okay? So here's that beast, okay, that comes out of the sea, picture of humanity. Okay? We'll see later, it's also said he was the one coming out of the bottomless pit. Right? Yet he was called the angel in chapter 9. They all use it interchangeably, folks, right? Now watch this, man. So in verse 5 of chapter 13, this beast was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given to him to continue. How long? There it is again, 42 months, right? Pattern. He opened his mouth and blasphemed against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. So there are those that dwell on earth and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, that's us, to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations, and all that dwell on the earth shall worship him whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world, etc. So you have this issue where saints on earth, the court, so to say. See, Satan can't touch heaven anymore, right? He can't go there. So where does he do it? He does it here. His time is short. He's on the earth. He's as a roaring lion. And it seems to me, now I realize in John's day this would have relevance because they were under heavy persecution by Rome, right? So Rome, again, when you look at the Bible as past, present, and future, the dragon was manifesting himself through Rome at that time, right? He manifests himself through any tyrannical, oppressive, persecuting regime on earth. That's the point of 12 and 13, ultimately. But in the end, it seems to me, could be wrong, there is coming a time that there is some type of end time persecution in the end, okay? I want to show you what I mean. In light of this, I'd like you to come to Daniel chapter 7, okay? Let's go all the way back to Daniel, my brother. You are older than me. Do you still pain? Yeah, chapter 7. Okay. Just had to throw that in there. Okay. So let me say this. I'm going to just read a little bit from my notes. I find the persecution faced by God's people through the years, understanding all that, I definitely find the historical view of a 3.5 years as corresponding to the church age certainly a very tenable one. I can certainly see that, okay? But also, it seems to me, since they repeat this phrase so often in Revelation, there seems to be more of a little bit of a specific application to it, if you will. So I do allow for a literal, maybe end-time thing, and if we can today, we might get to 2 Thessalonians where this man of sin is revealed. And Satan manifests himself through lying signs and wonders. This fits really well with Revelation 16 and the miracles that are done by the frogs that are coming out. Like Kermit, I don't trust him. I never did trust that guy. Anyway, you got to have some fun with it, right? It's a lot of information. Now, we're in Daniel 7, but you understand in Daniel 2 is that great prophecy of the stone cut out of the mountain that smashes all the kingdoms of the world. We're going to have to get there eventually, but in Daniel 7, notice the similar language, okay? Daniel 7. Let's take a look at verse 1. Let's just start reading a little bit. Is that cool today, if we read? And Lee, I haven't forgotten your question about chapter 15, about nobody was allowed in that sanctuary when the Lord's kind of blowing off some steam, you know what I mean? So we'll get there. I still think it's the one in the heaven, and there's a couple reasons why that picture is given, in my humble opinion. Daniel 7:1, let's take a look. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and the visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Verse 3, I saw 4 great beasts come up from the sea, all diverse from each other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Verse 5, the second was another beast, like a bear. Okay. Verse 6, another one was like a leopard. And verse 7, there was an exceeding dreadful 4th beast. Now, all 3 of these, lion, bear, leopard, are right mentioned there in Revelation 13, verses 1 through 4. Those are the things that they see. You have to compare Daniel 7 with it, okay? Now look at this 4th beast, exceeding dreadful, devoured and broken pieces, stamped out everybody in his way, and the beasts that were before it, and it had what? How many horns? 10 horns. Look at that. Remember in Revelation, the dragon had 7 crowns and 10 horns, right? Watch this now. I beheld till the thrones were all cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A stream issued and came from before him, and thousands ministered unto him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. Doesn't that sound like Revelation, which we've read? See, those are all expressions of you just can't put a figure on them. Thousands and 10,000s. It's not like a literal. I've had people map it out and say, this is approximately how many people are before the throne of God. Like, would you just be quiet? You have no idea what you're talking about. The judgment was set, the books were opened, and I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and giving to the burning fire. I'm sensing Revelation 19 and 20 here, right? As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. And I saw in the night visions, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, and that all peoples, nations, languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom which shall not be destroyed. We just read that in Revelation 11. All the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. You see? And he shall the kingdom's given to us. Okay? Now let's pick it up again here in verse 22. Okay? Now we'll start to see some Some familiar language again, okay? Until the Ancient of Days came, judgment was 21, I'm sorry. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints. Talking about the same vision. He prevailed against them, like we just read in chapter 13 of Revelation, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. We get it. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. And he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be divorced from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it into pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. He will speak great words against the Most High, shall wear out the saints of the Most High. He's going to want to change times and laws, and they shall be given to his hand until a time, times, and a half of time. That's the same time figure used in Revelation. Okay? And judgment shall sit, they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end, and the kingdom and dominion and greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High God, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Woo! Anybody else got a little bit of God bumps going on? So look, I know we're reading this. You may say, all I'm trying to show you is the familiar language. It's the same as in Revelation. So we have to be dealing with something at least very similar, wouldn't you say? So in this Daniel 7, this is about a way future thingy-do, right? Right? And so when you get all the way, for example, big stretch, Revelation 17, let's go, okay? You see this idea, like this is something that heaven has been anticipating for thousands of years, okay? We mentioned in the beginning, Revelation is the most Old Testament book in the New, especially because of the language used. And it's the consummation of all the prophets. Finally, right? And so when you get to 17, he's talking about this woman that rides the beast. Look in verse 6, this woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And this verse 8, the beast that you saw was and is not shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. He goes into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names aren't written in the book of life. Verse 9, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and there are 7 kings. I want to skip down to verse 12. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, which have no kingdom as of yet, but they'll have it with 1 hour. Did you see the same? 7, 10, 7, 10. That's all I wanted to show you, right? We're going to get to chapter 17. Don't worry about all the language yet, okay? But it's the same thing as Daniel. 10 horns. There's going to be one cat that's going to be blowing smoke more than the other. That's the new revised version right there. There's going to be one of these jokers, talking smack against the God of heaven. But Revelation ends the same way. This Babylon city falls. Here in verse 18, she's coming down. Babylon, look at chapter 17, verse 5. Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Call it what you want. Babylon, Rome, Nazi Germany, whatever. It's all one of the same. And Revelation chooses Babylon as the overriding and over the umbrella of it all, because in the beginning is where it all began. The Tower of Babel. Right? Babel means confusion. New Jerusalem is the city of peace. It's the quintessential difference between the world and God. Somehow, some way, this one beast is going into perdition, and it's going to be chaos, it looks to me, and it's going to look bad, but God's people are victorious in the end, and this, we know the headlines before they come. Okay? Does that make sense at all to you a little bit? Now, in the meantime, there's two witnesses that prophesy also. And now I'm tempted to go to 2 Thessalonians here because he talks about this man of sin. He talks about these lying signs and wonders. Okay? What should we do? Guys want to start with the two witnesses, or do you want to look at 2 Thessalonians? What's that? Witnesses. Okay. Yeah, it's 10:34. And right now, Lord, as you allow Joshua to still the sun and moon, we're asking you, God. All right, come back to chapter 11. And we'll just be able to get our little toesies wet today, okay? I don't know about the whole foot. But, so we're talking about biblical language, talking about the way it's worded, the way it's laid out, okay? And again, some people have more literal, some people figure, but there's no question that 3.5 connects with God's people, right? Now, so he says this now. With all these understandings now, you see how this temple, you're going to measure the altar. He did it another place in chapter 21 when he was measuring the city. It was 144 by 144. You couldn't miss that, man. That's God's people as one true, beautiful Israel of God. And so the Gentiles this holy city is getting persecuted on earth now. The world system is against God's people is the point, okay? And so, but have no fear. I will give power, in verse 3, have no fear, John. I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy. The same time frame, folks. 1,260 days. Clothed in sackcloth. That was a real fashion statement back then. You know, we should have a sackcloth pageant here at that. No. That was always a symbol of what? Mourning, it's kind of a rough time, so to say. All right, so and he tells you this. He says, here's who these two witnesses are. The two olive trees, one was black olives, the other was green olives. And they standing before the God of the earth, and if any man hurts them, fire proceeds where? Out of their mouth. Do you remember when we looked at the scorpions and the serpents and all those figures in chapter 8 and 9? And Jesus said, serpents and scorpions and heads and tails and all that are pictures of what? The power of the enemy. And he said, these scorpions and these serpents, the power is in their what? Remember from chapter 9? Is in their mouth. These are about words, man. These two witnesses are speaking something. They're talking about words. Fire comes out of their mouth. I'm reminded of Jeremiah 23. Is not my word like a fire which devours my enemy? Okay, we're going to get there. Now, on your notes, we will skip over to the two witnesses on page 5. We'll come back to what an Antichrist ministry may or may not look like at a later day. Bottom of verse 5, okay? That's where the notes begin. For time's sake, let's jump to page 6. Just turn it right over here. We are told these two olive trees are the two candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. And it's assumed, so he says it like this. He says, if you look at page 6, like right at the top there, the two arrows, the second arrow, it's assumed the reader knows something here. So he's like, oh, John, yeah, these two candlesticks, they're the two olive trees that stand before the earth. Oh, that clears it all up, Lord. Now I'll be looking for olive trees walking around like the Ents from the Lord of the Rings. I'll be looking for these trees that speak. And no, it's a familiarity with the book of Zechariah. These are the two olive trees. Oh, well, I've read Zechariah. Let's go there. Shall we? Zechariah 4. And this is where we begin to get an idea of kind of what's going on. And hopefully I'll be able to cover briefly. So there's 2 points of view. More of a historical view is that the two witnesses were Joshua and Zerubbabel in the book of Zechariah, which we're just about to read. The futurist believes they're Moses and Elijah because of the descriptions. Fire from heaven, blood and rain and all that stuff, you know. And by the way, the Pharisees, many in the time of Jesus, kind of thought something similar. We'll have to look at that next week. But in Zechariah 4, Jesus cleared that up, though. Elijah was John the Baptist. He said that. We're not making that up. Okay. Now watch. Here we go. You ready, spaghetti? Sure, Eddie. Eddie Spaghetti. It's better than being called special ed. That's kind of the chapter 4 of Zechariah. Okay, you guys ready? I know. Look, we're just getting it inside of us. We're going to let it marinate. We have plenty of time. We'll have the book. We'll have Revelation done by Christmas. We should be able to do it. Okay. The angel that talked with me came again and waked me as a man that is wakened out of his sleep. He said, "Hey, Zechariah, what do you see?" And I looked, and behold, a candlestick all of gold, with a bowl upon the top of it, and his 7 lamps. And 7 pipes went to the 7 lamps, which are upon its top. And 2 olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bowl, and the other on the left. Okay? And I answered and spoke to the angel that talked with me, saying, "What are these, my Lord?" And the angel that talked with me said, "You don't know what these are?" He says, "No, I just asked you the question." And then he answered and spoke to me, saying, "This is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, saying, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. Who are you, O great mountain, before Zerubbabel, that you shall become a plain? And he shall bring forth a headstone, crying, Grace, grace." The mountain was Babylon. They're in Babylon at this time. Remember, mountains are worldly powers. Zerubbabel, his name meant to be drawn out of Babylon. So he's prophesying of victory. Notice he talks about grace. Grace, grace. The mountains coming down by the power and the grace. The 2 anointed ones, he says, this is the word of the Lord. Whoa. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundations of this house. His hands shall finish it. You shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you. Who's despised the day of small things, they shall rejoice. And with Zerubbabel are the 7 eyes of the Lord, which run to and fro through the whole earth. We talked about the 7 eyes, remember, in Revelation 4 and 5. The 7 spirits, 7 eyes. Watch it now. And then I said, well, what are these 2 olive trees upon the right side and the left side of the candlestick? And I answered again and said to him, what are these branches which through the 2 golden pipes empty golden oil out of themselves? And he says, you don't know what these are? He goes, for the 3rd time, I'm telling you I don't. He says, these are the 2 anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth. So that cleared it all up again, right? They're the 2 anointed ones. Now, do you see some keys in here? Now, think about what we just read. What would be some keys you would see in the last 5 minutes we have? What's a phrase that kept recurring? I guess I didn't make that all too clear in my notes, but I do bring it up later down there about the word of the Lord kept coming up, didn't it? This is the word of the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. We know oil is a beautiful representation of God's Spirit, right? This is golden oil coming out of 2 witnesses on either side of the lampstand that's in the temple of God in heaven that was supposedly, the one on earth was made after that pattern. Remember that? Okay? And it gives light in God's house. Okay? You know what I'm saying? Okay, so here we have a candlestick of gold with a bowl on top, page 6. There's 7 pipes. 7 is God's what? Number. So it's a perfect picture of perfection. On either side of the candlestick are 2 olive trees, okay? Spirit of the Lord is mentioned. 7 eyes, right? And they're specifically called the 2 anointed ones before God, okay? So now you have a view, and we'll end it with this. You have a view that says it's Moses and Elijah coming in the future. Time fails us today to look at some of those verses. Maybe we'll pick it up next week. We have those in the past tense say, no, it's Joshua and Zerubbabel of the day. It said the word of the Lord. Now, wait a minute. But Revelation talks about it. So if you look at the red letters on page 6 there, Right underneath it, I believe we have to understand the eternal nature of these heavenly scenes. What's going on in Zechariah carries over into Revelation. The same was true with the other visions that were given in Ezekiel and Isaiah. And when you get to Revelation 4 and 5, they see God on a throne with a rainbow and all that. It was the same back in those prophet days too. Here's the current point. These two witnesses were obviously present in heaven way before Revelation and being described for all to read in Zechariah. I believe this shows they are eternal in scope, empowered by the Spirit, giving light to the temple of God and His house. Remember the Old Testament temple. There was a 7-lamp candlestick that gave light in His house, made after the pattern in heaven. Remember the churches in Revelation 1 through 3. The 7 candlesticks or lampstands were God's temple on earth, giving a light to the world, or rather a witness to the world of God's glory and His kingdom. I believe all this clearly goes beyond just a future Moses-Elijah application and a limited past tense view of Joshua and Zerubbabel. As far as any other references go of 2 olive trees in the New Testament, that would be Romans 11. Okay? I'm just comparing language. Now, we're running out of time, so I'm going to just tell you what I think these witnesses are. But the Romans 11 view, the one olive tree is Old Covenant Israel, and the other olive tree is us grafted in as New Covenant Israel. Therefore, based on all the biblical language, in my view, right in the middle page, I believe the 2 witnesses that stand before the Lord of the earth are pictures of the old and new covenants and the people of God that represents them. Through these covenants and His people, God hath both prophesied, witnessed, revealed, and fulfilled all His word concerning human history, past, present, and yet future. Ultimately, it is about His word. I got these verses. We're going to look at them next week. Your word is settled in heaven forever, O Lord. These kind of things. It's the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel. Well, it's the word of the Lord through Matthew. It's the word of the Lord through Jesus. It's the word of the Lord, you name it. Okay? What these witnesses can do is all described by the words of God all throughout the Bible. Fire. They can do anything at will. And these covenants are also represented by the people of God as well. So when they finally kill them off in Revelation 11, they're in the grave 3.5 days, not 3.5 years. So you could see the figurative use of the number, right? And so these are the same people that were persecuted in the other chapters. You just got to combine them. You just got to compare them. Lock them together. Okay? Again, we win. So that's what I think the 2 witnesses are. I gave you a ton of scriptures. You can compare them at will. We'll have to end there, happy campers. I appreciate your kind attention. Again, I have asked for forgiveness up front. But what else can we do in 45 minutes? But you know what I mean? If we want to learn the Bible, let's learn the Bible. Okay? Right? We good? Amen. All right. God bless you. Got to wrap it up. There you go. Pick it up next time. Same bat channel, same bat time. All right?